what I said. Okay, to summarize what we were talking about off stage, I wanted to talk about disambiguation and talk about what can make a claim unique or canonical, and how we can design that into the system so that the disambiguation or the definition of the claim becomes what makes it canonical, or at least programmatically you could say identify duplication, that sort of thing. And I was talking about what is in the white paper, which was a very, very rough first version of this, which I define context as being elements attached to a claim. And context and elements are essentially links from the claim to entities in a knowledge graph. And there's a problem in that if it's just a link without any other ordering to it, because for example, if you have a sentence, President Bush is disappointed in President Bush, you can have a link to President Bush Sr. and President Bush Jr., and you don't know which one is which. Which President Bush is the subject and which is the object. So there are linguistic questions. If you link it to the actual phrases in the sentence, you have another problem, which is then the claim is essentially defined by the sentence that was used, because we want to be able, or we believe that a claim can be stated using multiple different sentences and structures. And so, you would have to kind of remake the connection with every rewording or something. So there's a linguistic, the area of linguistics and other areas, I don't even know what to call them, that deal with this sort of problem with the subject, predicate, and all that might go into how we model and structure this. But this all goes into kind of my understanding that the claim is a concept and not the words used to express the concept. And how do we model the concept itself so that it's unique in the system? I'm Marc-Antoine. So I just gave the background again of kind of what I'd like to do with these sessions on my days. And not to repeat myself yet again, it's the whole disambiguation thing, and how do we define, how do we find the unique key that for each claim or each concept. And you're kind of required for this because you have gotten the furthest down this road as far as I've seen in terms of modeling. And I don't have any fundamental understanding of the areas of linguistics or how to model a concept versus just writing it in a sentence.
Okay.
So yeah, well, let me just, I guess, preface to say, like, before we start getting into your model or into models, let's just kind of first open to everyone to discuss the subject itself. So with that, you can go ahead and give your comment.
Give my comment, which is that I think there's going to be, several valid ways to approach this, and each one's going to provide trade-offs. Like my inclination is, so first, my perception of your inclination, I could be wrong here, Tim, but my perception of your inclination is you want to find some sort of structured way to identify and model a quote unquote claim, and it's independent from the actual text used to represent the claim, and it's sort of static in time. Once you've identified it, and that's kind of it. And like I can see benefits to doing that, and I can also see difficulties in doing that. And my inclination is to sort of focus more on the claim or the text themselves and find ways to sort of dynamically add structure on top of them. I think that's going to be, and that may come down to difference in goals. Like my goal is I would like to create something Reddit-like. Certainly not Reddit itself, too noisy, too many participants, but I would like sort of low barrier to entry, or maybe Stack Overflow is a better example. Relatively low barrier to entry. Someone who has spent a little time, and by little time I mean maybe like half an hour, looking into a problem, might have something useful to contribute, that kind of thing. But then, I think there's another approach, and again, I don't mean to impute, things to you, but maybe if not you, I think other people in this group, they might like, people who kind of have to spend weeks preparing to deal with the system. Like, how do I formally model things? What's the right approach for adding things? How do I ensure that it's, not already existing in the system? And to me, I don't think a new user should have to spend weeks before they do something like that. And again, I apologize if I'm sort of misrepresenting or sort of straw manning the situation. But I guess my basic summary is I do think there's going to be different valid approaches, and what I would like us to do in the not too distant future is capture those alternatives and start talking about their relative strengths and weaknesses to each other. And either we decide on one, or if we decide that different members of the group are, really want to pursue different ones, I just think it's good to be clear about what those things are and the other relative trade-offs.
Well, just a quick reaction to that, which is I think I'd like to avoid focusing too much on user experience with this. We've discussed this a lot, where we all agree. One of our definitions of the term incremental formality is we all agree a user should just be able to come in and type in some text and be done. They've contributed something, right? Which means I wouldn't expect you to require to map the whole concept before you've contributed. However, I believe that canonicality would best be served if we were to able to find these, what I call unique keys, based around a concept. If that turns out not to be possible, okay, we tried, but I'd like to try to do that in these sessions.
May I, Felix?
Sure. Yeah. Because I will touch something completely different.
Possibly, okay, or not. One thing that surprised me a bit, Carl, is when you said smaller number of users in Reddit. I'm personally interested in the very massive collective intelligence use case. So, and that means, of course, we have to allow non-experts, non-specialists to contribute, and hence this whole notion of progressive formalization. But that means I expect a huge, again, massive number of contributions, and hence deduplication and disambiguation is fundamental, hence the need for claim signatures, because otherwise there's going to be a plethora of equivalent claims, and it's not possible to have to get a cognitive handle on that huge number. So that's one maybe difference in objective. But the other part of what you're saying is, yes, there's different objectives, and that's fine. And should we pick an approach? What I hope is that we can agree on a way to do things that allows multiple approaches to coexist and interoperate. In that sense, in a way, I totally agree with Tim. We want to attempt a kind of claim signature hash something. I'm not sure anybody can get it right. I expect many claim signature schemes to coexist with slightly different trade-offs. And well, we'll probably, when a claim is entered, do many signatures. And if a claim matches along one of those signatures, then we know we can tentatively consider merging it and look at how it differs using the other signatures and schemes. And so it's really, I'm very, very, very explicitly, I want to embrace multiplicity of approaches explicitly and make the protocol very resilient to this multiplicity. I don't believe in one ring to rule them all. I believe in federation. But I do believe, on the other hand, we want a unified information space out of this federation, and being able to treat it as one, and being able to treat it as like ask distributed queries that give us a unified result. So it's this, but yes, having signatures, and what is interesting there is you can have multiple signatures which are more or less complex. Like one intuition I got from Stephen, which I think is extremely interesting, is you can forget doing the full signature of the claim and just look at the components. And if you do that, for example, if I say, the sky is blue or the sky is not blue, the components are sky and blue, and the signature would be the same. So that's a very primitive signature because it does not distinguish negation. It's still valuable because I'll look at these and can ask, are those the same? However, of course, it would be nicer to also have a system that looks at negation and can distinguish those, and that's added information. So the idea of an information ecosystem is
just a pause there. Just for Carl, because you're new here, you kind of missed our whole series of discussions on negation, which is or if you start getting confused, maybe we can summarize that for you. I don't think it's necessary right now, but no. Negation is a whole area of discussion.
Yeah. It's found its own, and now in terms of, is it possible to have a unique immutable, on the one hand, a unique immutable signature? On the one hand, that's a goal. On the other hand, it's probably impossible. But again, this is, do we have partial results that add value? I believe that's totally possible and valuable and worth doing.
Why do you say it's impossible? I think if it's enforced by the system, it is what it is. You assign it the unique key, and that's it. It is what it is.
It's impossible in the long run because meanings are mutable and all the component meanings will evolve. And then does that claim mean anything with the new evolve? And then we can try to.
Well, the interpretation of that definition evolves, but not the unique key, as I would state it, right? One thing you said really quickly, I want to throw in there as a reaction to one thing you said. Like I'm trying to oppose the federation and trying to oppose, flexibility and multiple models of everything everywhere, because I think that'll be messy. But I definitely see a parallel in what you're saying to the scoring mechanism, which is that scoring is just a model of the acceptance or truth algorithm, and never meant to be interpreted as the actual thing. And in this case, the disambiguation or the unique key is just a model of the concept, and it's never going to be the concept, right? So I get that. And maybe if it becomes clear, like what I want to do here is try to get to one solution, and if it becomes clear where the solution fails and another solution would be better, then that opens up the conversation for having multiple models.
Okay, I do need some context on that though. What does the hand waving mean, Mark Antoine?
Approve.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'll start with my original comment when Timothy asked, comments. Because I might have an interesting perspective to bring into that, because I had a complete class at university on graph isomorphism, which means just like the current state of research if two graphs are equal. And the first takeaway there is that if you want to say something, two things are equal, there are many possibilities to do that. And what's usually intuitive is to start with, okay, what are the differences? Do we have any metrics to point out differences? Like for the graphs, it would be the number of nodes or whatever. And you can find arbitrary metrics to differentiate. But this, in the end, will never completely solve the problem. And what you actually want is a canonical representation of the graph, if that exists. And it does, but yes.
I don't necessarily know if I want canonical. I don't have the belief that there is a canonical representation of the graph.
No, I'm not talking about CDL right now. I'm just like theory.
The proposition can be taken as a graph here. So you want a canonical representation of the proposition, which you can treat as a graph in this conversation.
Yeah, or let's say I'm not talking about graphs, I'm just talking up to things. And we want to say these two things are equal or not. I can find metrics to say in why they're different because they have a different metric on this specific metric. Or I can say I find a canonical representation of these two things. And if they have the same canonical representation, then they're equal. And that's a very interesting insight. And in many ways, it turns out that it's much harder to find a canonical representation for things than to find metrics which differentiate them. So that's just what the perspective that came to my mind when you asked, like, okay, let's talk about deduplication, because we can approach it from different sides.
And this is, I agree totally. And this is why I'm thinking also of different metrics, different representations. It's another way to say different metrics, right? There's multiple metrics, multiple signatures of a statement, different hash of different characteristics. And those, it's the equality would be ideally equality along all those values, right? It's possible that multiple metrics conjointly determine equality of a proposition, but they can each be partial. I mean, of course, you can trivially constitute a tuple of all the metrics you have.
But it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily complete.
Correct. But the question is, does it already add value? And I'm sure the answer is yes there. But by the way, it doesn't mean I don't believe in doing canonical representation of propositions. I do. You know, I keep talking about the signature of IPLD graph. I mean,
you know, this is my ignorance, my complete ignorance, but this seems like the kind of thing that's the area of academic research. Is there somebody who has already gone down this road and tried to represent canonically
yes.
propositions or claims?
Well,
okay.
Well, yeah. Okay, that's the I'm sure there's something I'm not aware of in that route, but what I can tell you is that at the level of claim components, that is entities and propositions and frames, there's a lot of academic efforts, but none that acts as a standard that everybody's converged on. We're totally beset by the XKCD curse of standards. There is actually recently, as I was looking at stuff for the little presentation I did with Jamie, I found some very interesting a kind of Rosetta Stone between WordNet, VerbNet, and the FrameNet of Stanford and another one. So people are doing these kinds of, okay, let's do the equivalence between different systems, which is, wow, it's done. It's hugely valuable. But does that mean it's exhaustive, canonical, this, that, and the other? I'm sure there are non-overlapping concepts. And the notion of the closest thing to a one ring to rule them all in the concept mapping space, and not in the predicate mapping space, but at least the concept mapping space, which is necessary prerequisite, is IEML. The effort of Pierre Lévy is done a very kind of abstract Aristotelian, actually inspired by Peirce. So for me, it's interesting. grand schema of all concepts and areas of knowledge. But he's still, so far, I find, dealing more with entities than with frames. Though frames are there, I guess. But still, it's an interesting effort. And
the definition again of frame.
Frame is, for example, an action frame. Paul gives the ball to Mary. The notion of giving has these set roles, giver, recipient, object. And each of these events, actions, is a frame with slots. So you have to fill the slot to know what the event was. So it's a kind of predicate with variables. So that's a frame. And one of the well-known, well-done frame catalogs is that of Stanford, the FrameNet. It's very good. And there's VerbNet, which is another effort. And as I said, there's beam mapping between those. So IML is more at the entity ontology, but so is Sumo, all the, VerbNet. I'll give you a few references, maybe offline, because I don't want to be searching right now. Who else has been trying to do big entity ontologies? Of course, the upper ontologies in the semantic web, right? The Sumo of the world, and there's others. And again, same thing, academicians have come up with multiple upper ontologies, and there's mappings between them and so on. The other big effort, of course, has been Psych. Doug Lennett's Psych. I remember having had a great insight from listening.
Can you spell that? Sorry, Mark Antoine. What is Psych? Can you spell it?
CYC.
CYC.
And it's in the chat. And I remember, if you look in a conference with recently, and I remember speaking about it in the, some older messages are lost. Okay, we don't have the statue. Ouch.
You mean to either pay money or set up a nonprofit to get our history back.
Canonical Debate Lab was a nonprofit. Like,
we were using Society Library, I think, or something, but then Society Library needed its own Slack. So no, maybe it was. I can't remember which one we were using at the time, but.
Damn it, I can't find it. That's a shame. I'll stop putting things here for memory then. Great conference of and knowledge graph conference I attend regularly. And I had some interesting insights from that, which I put in the chat. So they're lost. Let me see if I have. 1 second.
I think we're having mic problems. That probably whenever your processor has to run something, it's cutting off your voice.
Oh, sorry. Tools for Thought and Doug Lennett and Jim Handler. So, whoops. Yeah. Doug did higher order logic and macros. He compiles a human-like frame language with spaces to a lower level. He also does not believe in global consistency. He has a night where Psych can tell the expert, here are 10 plausible things that could have led me to your conclusions. Which one did you know to be true? That's cute. No, I don't have the, but now that I know it's Tools for Thought, I can recording again. But they've really worked on getting a propositional description of everything. I don't know if they were reaching for canonicality, but they were at least reaching for coverage, being able to describe anything in their formal language. It's one of the most
Coverage is
advanced.
probably actually more towards what I'm looking for, because you know, like the example of Satoshi Nakamoto, it's what is your definition of that person, and you may come up with definitions on the fly and have variations and that sort of thing. And we know there's going to be ambiguity in these things, so I don't know. I don't think there's the essence of Satoshi Nakamoto. I think there's, what is this person talking about, or what can it be taken as?
I think, yeah, this is, no, damn it, I still looking for the Linnet thing, but I'll get it. Anyway, so yeah, Psych is the most evolved commercial closed source effort in, and it's been, let's be clear here, it's been decades of manpower. It's been centuries, actually, of person year work. But there's a lot to learn just listening to Doug Linnet describe it. But it's amazing. Now, how well
so is that? Do you know much about how that's created? So is that manually curated, or how does Psych? So it's manually.
It's totally manually curated. They get experts to create this knowledge base. Like, basically, they want common sense reasoning. So they want a system that has enough facts about common sense, about basic knowledge, to be able to make reasonings about common sense world. And they have this whole higher level frames and lower level frames. And it's basically a classic symbolic AI. I want to know whether this is true. Okay, look in the fact base, and can I reach that? And as I said, one thing that they've done, which is bloody impressive, is if you give it a true fact and it cannot deduce it from its existing fact base, it will be able to say, oh, this or that premise could have led me there. Is any of those known to be true? It's very much working on micro domains. That's very important. It's not, we're in this domain, so this is the fact base in this micro domain, and we're in that other domain. And sometimes we have to cross them, but there's no global consistency. Each micro domain is internally consistent, but the global space is not, and it doesn't attempt to be, which I think is absolutely fascinating and probably necessary. But it's a frame-based language. It works. Yep.
Well, okay. So, I mean, I would like to, I don't know if you had, like, if you're close to, saying a little bit more, but I kind of want to start with a reply to the current direction of the.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So, I mean, I know, Tim, you'd asked, that you want to focus more on the canonicality of claims, and not on sort of end user experience or UX. I'm struggling with that, though, because for me, if I don't think about, okay, what is this system actually going to do or actually be like to work with, or how is it actually going to operate, I'm struggling with sort of like fundamental approach and premises. And I'm going to sort of touch on a few different things, and I apologize that it's hand wavy, but I think at least the gist will be clear. So to me, at least, it's kind of obvious that manual curation approaches are like not the way to go forward with these systems. Like, 3 decades of getting experts to, enter into a system, to me sounds incredibly burdensome, time consuming, and fragile, particularly if there's sort of fundamental premises missing, or approaches to, now I mean premise in the terms of the logic contained in the system, but the fundamental design of the system, if that kind of doesn't work, I mean, you've just spent decades, and who knows how much money paying experts to put things into the system, but oh my gosh, we forgot to ask them this question every time they entered a claim. Now we don't know if that's the case. Like, shoot, what do we do? at the same time, I'm looking at tools like Lambda, LAMDA, which I don't know, if you guys had seen that come out of Google or not. That is to step back from that, just sort of more AI approaches, neural net, like large data. I mean, the types of things that systems like that can do, just focusing on large data, are, I mean, it's like, it blows me away. And I don't have any special, access or, insight into how Lambda, does what it does. If I did, I probably couldn't be working on this project. But it seems to me that if we're going to provide a tool or a system that is going to, at the end, at some point in the future, be providing sort of the cutting edge ability for people to, let me put it this way. So when you go to Google and you start typing something, and Google automatically says, oh, what I really think you're trying to look for is this, what I really think you mean is this. The type of semantic equivalence that a company like Google is able to do with with this machine learning approach, I think that's the way that any sort of claim equivalence will need to be done, because the types of nuances that exist in language at a particular time, the way those nuances change over time with different usage and picking up slang or whatever vernacular, those things I think can only really at scale be handled by a system that's more data driven as opposed to manually curated. And so I apologize, this is so hand wavy. I hope that the tenets are made sense, but be clear, hold on, I'm not quite done, but I'm almost done. So I mean, maybe it's just the conclusion now. So any approach that's sort of based on this manual curation of an action frame with okay, what are the things you put into the action frame, or what's this canonical ID, that to me they seem very fragile, because okay, this thing that we made canonical, okay, today, tomorrow, the word sky has new meaning, and now like this claim is just, it's unclear, even with this intended disambiguation. Now it's unclear what this means. I just don't think that those types of approaches are going to scale if we try to sort of manually curate this forever ID. That's why I'm kind of pushing for a super layer that is designed to be resilient to future uses or changes.
It's my interpretation is the exact opposite. We're not trying to program computers. We're trying to navigate understanding between people. So first off, partial solutions are better than no solution, right? It's a step in the right direction, and will be functional. There will just be rough edges, right? So in that sense, my goal is to reduce the rough edges. We already have Kialo, right? I want to reduce the rough edges on Kialo. The level of complexity that I don't want something that requires armies of academics looking over years. I want to go, the sky is blue. Oh, okay, what do you mean by the sky? And what is your definition of blue here? Are you talking about, could be interpreted as blue in any shade? Are you talking about, I want people to be able to be more specific. Now, the fact that, and my definition of canonicality is, like I said, well, maybe this is one of the most fundamental misunderstandings, is I'm not trying to get at the Aristotelian concept, ideal of that concept. I'm just wanting people to nail down their definitions enough to discuss it, which is why if interpretations change over time, then, well, how do I put this? Maybe what I mean by claim is really what Marc-Antoine means by interpretation. Well, your interpretation is bridging one sentence somewhere to another, or one point. But what it is I want to lay out on the table exactly what you mean here that we're discussing, and then we'll post our arguments to support that thing, and to the point we can agree. If there's ambiguity or misunderstanding, that comes out in variations in acceptance of the arguments and that sort of thing. Oh, it looks like you're talking about something else here because your argument doesn't really apply. Or okay. Well, the final point I'll throw out and then, but is this, to me, the solution is never modifying a claim. It is, if you think this claim isn't what you're talking about, create a new one and start from scratch. Put your own definition and do that one. It's not try to evolve this claim into what people think or interpret the words now. It's to, okay, discuss it here with your understanding of.
And know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful for me in this conversation if we focus on what we're trying to do. Like if Psych is not what we're interested in, then like it's good to maybe make a footnote on Psych. But let's not talk deeply about Psych. Let's focus on what we actually want to do.
No.
We have an hour.
Why did I
have
introduce
16 minutes before my next meeting, starts. So like I want to make sure that we're moving forward and focusing on what the group actually wants to do. You know what I mean?
No. But there is. How much of Psych do we need? Hopefully not too much, because yes, Psych is totally out of scope. That's clear to me. On the other hand, this deduplication requires recognizing equivalent claims put differently. And that means anything that helps us get closer to the Platonic ideal of the claim. You said Aristotelian ideal. I don't believe the Platonic ideal exists. Let's be clear. I'm not a Platonician. But anything that gets us closer to, well, here's a kind of constant signature that will be true of this expression and that expression, so that we know that those claims amount to the same thing, so we can deduplicate them and merge them and say, well, this is saying the same thing in another way. I think that's useful. Now, I'm very much thinking about the army of academics. We need an army of academics for Psych. If we need an army of academics, we've lost, or at least, here's how I see it. I want crowdsourcing. The whole point of we have numbers. The numbers is a problem because there'll be so many expressions of the same claims, but they're also an asset because we can get so many people to look at the claims and say, hey, these are the same, these correspond, these don't correspond. And sometimes it will means we'll have conflicting views, and that's also part of the problem, but part of the reality. But it's also, I want the numbers to be a strength for us. And that means we have to lead people from, hey, I can just type something and I've made a contribution, to, well, maybe what's the next step after that? Can you make sure that what you say is different from that? And how is it different? And use leading questions. And sorry, that's a UX conversation, and we said we wouldn't go too deep in UX, but how can we lead people from a very naive usage of linguistic claims towards looking at how are those claims the same? How are they different? Because what we want is to be able to, what's the goal, right? To be able to give someone a map of the neighborhood claim space. Like, I'm making a claim. Okay, what are the reasons to believe this? What are the reasons not to believe this? What are the alternative beliefs? And being able to make that map, if there's no deduplication, each of these will be myriad and people's head will explode and they'll leave. And so deduplication is important. On the other hand, how can we leverage the numbers? So we need enough of a claim signature and structure that we can leverage it in using both human and some automated reasoning. I'm not huge on automated reasoning, but it has its place, it has its value. It can give suggestions to humans to say, hey, this looks, I'm looking in the vector space and this seems awfully close to that. Is it the same thing? Get a human to validate always. But if some vector system or some other system has suggestions, we'll take them because we want to help humans curate this information space. Is that clearer in terms of what is and is not in scope?
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me. I guess, sorry, so I'll probably have to leave in like 7 minutes to prepare for the next meeting. But the other thing that I'd like to sort of propose to the group is that we try to orient towards finding action items that may be useful. So like I wrote down the notes, 2 possible action items that could come out of this meeting. I'm not saying we have to do them, but like, for example, we could say, hey, will someone research and present on the existing academic presentations of claims, recognizing that we're all busy and the presentation might be perfect, but at least someone then would make some effort to go and find them. Maybe someone else will pick it up later and add more things there. Like we could grow a doc on here's the existing academic claims. Just like I heard Tim ask that, hey, does anyone know about that? And it would be nice to actually have some work towards actually collecting that if we think that would be useful. Another possible action item would be someone would just propose a design for modeling claims. Like, what do we think we might do? Will it be an action frame? Okay, if so, how would that look? And then other people can comment and say, well, here's the problems I see. And then we can have a little back and forth. Like, I would just like to see, concrete steps moving forward. And so I don't know, what do people think about those? And are there other action items, or could we have at least one action item coming out of our discussion?
The thing about the modeling, I think having a review of existing stuff is actually a very good thing to do, and I approve. Doing a model is something we've been trying to do for a while now, and we argue a lot about what should and shouldn't be in the model, and that's why we went back to definitions. We went full circle, definitions to model, to arguing about what do you mean by this model, and that's how we got back to definitions. So I think the definitions work is relevant. Felix?
Just talking about for the modeling, that's why I started to work on a general modeling UI, so we can actually try models without writing a new program every time we change the model, right? So
what is that UI?
Yeah,
is it available or
no, not yet. It's not finished. But that's what I'm working on. It's like a generalized hypergraph UI.
I do want to see your work when you have a moment.
Yeah, we can schedule a session for that and then have more motivation to prepare a bit more.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
But absolutely, Carl, I'd like to show you what we've done so far in modeling. And I think that's the next step. You should at least see what we've done, what are the problems we've encountered trying to make those models, and so on and so forth. So that would certainly be useful and relevant work.
Right. This is the very first meeting. Carl, if you didn't get the sense before, we essentially resolved some of the struggles that we had with people wanting to go in lots of different directions by just breaking it up into different days where one person decides the direction. So like Tuesdays are my day to decide the direction. And I just realized that this is something that I've been waiting to do for a long time. And so today is the first day that I'm trying to focus on this specific aspect of the thing, which is why today was kind of a general, let's talk about it, kickoff. But I definitely agree that the first two steps that I see as being concrete steps are some kind of review. Maybe Marc-Antoine, you already provided the review enough of the academic material already. If it's up to us to, I mean, I don't know if you want to present it or if it's better you just hand us the things that we should read.
There's so many.
You need to intuit that, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many elements I could present, and each of them would take time. And there's a lot I'm not aware of, and doing a bit of research would certainly not be time wasted because things may have evolved since last. But right now, there's some amazing stuff coming out of category theory and of language. Ty Danae Bradley's last articles are absolutely fascinating. But again, do we want to go there? I don't know. But it's interesting to see how she's doing an internship at Google on this. So
what's her name?
Ty, let me.
You cut out
Instead
again,
of
sorry. Oh, there.
Yeah, whenever he does something on his computer, it cuts out.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever I type, it cuts me.
There you go.
So that I don't bother people when I'm typing.
Would you be willing to start like a Google Doc or, I guess whatever shared representation you would want to share it with Marc-Antoine, or is there anyone who would take up the initial, presenting
won't,
academics?
Yeah, go ahead.
Since it's my day, I can try to take the work of organizing some of this information in a doc. I think the first concrete next step. Unfortunately, a lot of this initial steps depend on you, Marc-Antoine, and I know you're already trying to find time to prepare for your Friday, so I don't want to burden you too much. So the easiest probably next step might be for you to present what you've already done, because I don't think that requires much preparation for you. In the meantime, you know, I'll put in the doc. Yeah, and you could give me a list of things we could do for further reading just to get a head start. We can read on our own or not. Later on, we should do a presentation. Whoever has time, it would probably have to be you because you're the only one who understands it sufficiently to give a quick overview of the different ideas in academia. But another smaller step that I could start doing is, and you guys can contribute, is a section or a document of claims that we would like to see modeled, claims that show some unique aspect of modeling that might make it complicated. Like the Bush example I gave complicates the problem of competing nouns, right? Or different verb structures, or indexical, or things like that, right? So I'll add, I guess, to the document that Carl started with a section for that that we can add over the week. So Friday will be your presentation. And then next Tuesday, I'll let you know ahead of time what I think would be the appropriate thing. Maybe we just start throwing out ideas on the set of claims that we collected.
I realized the first person I'll want to introduce, the persons I've named yet. What's his name? I'll give you the name, but another of the old
Carl needs to go, right?
Yeah, I have to run.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. See you.
Okay. See you later. Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
But
Thanks.
yeah, let's create a document so I can give things to read. Sowa, John Sowa. Took me a second. There's
Marcus,
so much of
you cut off at some point.
Yeah, you have to practice not typing when you're talking.
Yeah.
I wasn't typing for a change, so I don't know what happened.
There must be a delay.
Yeah, John Sowa is, so let's create a document. I'll put links to John Sowa's work. I think he's one of the persons who's the best entry point into modeling propositions. So I'll give that, and I'll give specific documents to read.
Cool.
For Friday.
Right.
Let's make Friday a Sowa day. I think that's a good use of our time.
Sounds good.
Excellent. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. Glad you could join, Marc-Antoine. Glad you could.
Yeah, sorry for the, these medical appointments are hard to move around.
Life.
No worries.
Life intervenes. All right.
Yeah.
Bye. See you tomorrow.